Hello everyone and welcome to Film Foundations, a movie podcast where we answer 4 very important questions that we came up with so you know that they're important. Those 4 questions are, what's the best entry point? What's the deepest cut? What's the biggest impact on pop culture? And if you like this or want to watch something similar, what might that be? I am one of your hosts, Chris Stasher, the host of the Culture Cast, and I'm joined by my good friend all the way from Disconnected, Ryan Verrill.
Hello, and thank you for the radio voice intro. That was wonderful.
You're welcome. We would continue on from here, but on this episode of Film Foundations, it's the first time we're joined by a guest, all the way from such places as MondoHeather.com and Weirding Way Media's Noise Junkies, where she is one of the hosts of that show, with 2 other guys who only have 2-letter names. She does not have a 2-letter name. She is a not right, HD. I guess you could. She is a freelance pop culture writer, and she is a very close friend of mine, and she's soon to be a close friend of yours, Heather Drain.
Hello. It's an honor to be here, especially being your inaugural guest. That's very exciting.
Most people would be scared, but you accepted the challenge.
Oh, I always go where angels fear to tread. Are you kidding? I introduced water power to the projection booth. Come on.
I don't even know what that is.
Oh my God. I have failed you as a friend. It's a Sean Costello's 1976 classic film about an enema bandit. And it stars Jamie Gillis. It's loosely based on the actual real life case of the Illinois water bandit, which Frank Zappa wrote a song about. And if you love Taxi Driver and intense acting, you will love Water Power.
And enemas.
I mean, it's in there, yeah.
Well, it sure is. It has to be for it to work.
But you get to hear lines like, these bitches need to be cleaned. And, I think that's a great way to attack one's personal problems in life, You're like, God, I got to clean this house. And you just channel your own inner enema bandit. And instead of cleaning bitches, you're cleaning your kitchen. And not forcing enemas on people. I don't recommend that.
You want to hear something shocking, Heather? As we were choosing topics for this episode today, one of the items on your list was Jamie Gillis. Chris had no idea who Jamie Gillis was.
Oh,
true. It's very true, and I have no problem admitting it either.
You need to let me program another month on the Culture Cast.
Only if there is guaranteed a lot of peen.
I can do that.
Yeah, Jamie Gillis. It sounds like there might be.
Yeah, but Jamie. I mean, in all seriousness, Jamie Gillis is a phenomenal actor, and I certainly wouldn't put anybody on my list if I didn't respect them as an artist and have and their sort of charisma and screen. And that's not me. That charisma's not code for penis. Okay. We're talking great talent. Jamie is...
The charisma is my penis.
I mean, if it's Gene Simmons talking about charisma, he's probably talking about his penis. But I mean it in a very G-rated way.
So speaking of not picking things that aren't worth talking about, Heather, you are our first guest, like you mentioned, and we asked you what you wanted to talk about, and you gave us some directions you thought about going, and then we said, all right, here's what we think. So on this episode of Film Foundations, we are talking about the first guest topic, which is 90s indie vampire movies. Indie vampire movies from the 90s. How's that, Chris? Better. Good.
It's a mouthful. It's a lot. I mean,
we're raw doing it, Heather.
Oh my God. I'm sorry.
You had to go and do it.
I
sure
got the vapors. I got the vapors immediately. You mentioned my Vampire King.
Well, 90s indie vampires. Obviously, the 90s was a pretty big decade for vampire films. The indie side of it, why go down the indie route instead of some of the studio picks?
Well, for 2 reasons. One, you guys requested for me to do micro genres, which honestly, I have to admit, I had to Google. But part of that is, I think the way my brain works is I tend to think of terms of like categories of genres so loosely that like with like, especially like I see this more with music than film, but when people start getting into micro genres, my brain, it starts feeling like math a little bit to me, and so my brain kind of shuts down. But I do love a good challenge, and when I realized micro genres just basically you take like a big genre and just apply certain sort of factors that are not quite tropey, but you can kind of say trope adjacent to them. And I think the 90s had some really interesting and a very diverse independent vampire films. And I mean, the big studio ones have been talked about a lot. And some of those are movies I love. I adore Neil Jordan's Interview with the Vampire. I don't love this without some. There are things I don't love about it. I do love most of Bram Stoker's Dracula.
I love all of that. I love all of that movie.
I love some of it.
Are you Count Dracula? Keanu was not cast correctly.
He seems lovely. He's lovely. Him or Winona Ryder. Like, honestly, people rag on him. They should rag on both of them.
Yeah.
But we'll save that for another podcast.
90s vampire movies, no independent qualifier.
Yeah. But of course, you guys know me. I'm a deep cut. I'm a deeper cut girl, anyways. I rather kind of look at the ones in general, whether it's like my writing or on when I get to do podcasts or whatever. Yeah. I prefer to kind of go off the beaten track a little bit. So I was like, I want to do independent, and some of my favorite movies from the 90s are on this list. So.
Speaking of that list, you want to go over some of the titles and maybe a little bit of a history of what the we'll say like the vampire scene was, because one of the things that we talked about on an earlier episode of this is how it seems like in America genre cinema, at least, we go through these cycles between vampires and zombies, and we're like sorely needing another vampire round. We haven't had anything great other than a couple outliers since the 90s. Like, it hasn't been an overpowering vampire time. We've been inundated with The Walking Dead. So, what were the 90s like? Tell us about your love for vampires and some of those titles that we're going to be talking about.
Oh my gosh. Well, vampires have been my favorite supernatural creature since I was a little girl. My first crush ever, and I was like 4 or 5, was on Bela Lugosi as Dracula, because I used to just always like go through film books. Like, I'm very lucky because my mom was into, and she still loves cinema, but she's loved classic old Hollywood, and so we'd go to the library a lot, and she would check out books, and I'd be like, I would try to read them, and and go through the pictures, and just seeing that image. And I've always been a monster kid. I still am. But there's something about the vampire. And of course, as I got older, I realized, oh, you're goth. That's why. So that there's that. But I think with vampires and vampirism, there's a way where it's sort of like a monster within too, because a lot of times, depending on the adaptation, it's a way to kind of like look at, I think monsters in general are kind of a neat way to sort of confront our own sort of darker elements, but in a supernatural context, which is such a gift that horror gives us in general. And with the 90s, I feel like you're really starting to see elements, actually speaking of Gothic subculture, of the music and the fashion really come into play with the cinema of it. I don't think you really saw that quite as much in the 80s stuff. I mean, and there's some great films. I definitely recommend Dance of the Damned, which I know is on a Shout Factory double feature. And that was a really underrated movie, but that's 80s, so we won't talk about it, but I do recommend it. But with 80s, of course, you got Fright Night. And that's, obviously not an independent film, but it's a masterpiece. With the 90s, and I think the 90s had such a great independent film scene too, because that was really the era too where people really started discussing independent cinema as a thing, almost like it's its own genre. And I mean, to the point where I think the lines got blurred because people would be like, oh, Quentin Tarantino. And it's like, but But Harvey Weinstein is, well, we're going to talk about him, but you know, it's like, that's not really independent. Like we're talking about definitely direct to video fare here with these films. And I got to start off, if you want me to go through the list, Subspecies. Of course, I think any monster kid that has grown up in the 80s and 90s, Full Moon. Well, Full Moon originally was Wizard, and then Empire, and then Full Moon. And I think all of us monster kids, there's got to be at least one Full Moon film you love and that you connect with. And it could be Puppet Master, Trancers. For me, though, of course, Subspecies. And I adore Ted Nicolau is such an underrated director, and he's directed all of these movies, all the Subspecies movies, and Vampire Journals, which is also on my list, which is a sort of spin-off of it. That was sort of their Anne Ricean. It's very Interview with the Vampire. But I don't think that's a bad thing. And it's done beautifully. It's the visual language. And it's shot in Romania. They actually had a real castle. Like, you know, they're using Romanian, some of their best lighting people. The score to the original Subspecies, I mean, I put that right up there with the score to Bram Stoker's Dracula, and I think that's one of the best soundtracks ever. But so is Subspecies. Like, the music is pinpoint if you love gothic horror, and I do. And I mean, and that's gothic not just in terms of like, say, like Sisters of Mercy or Bauhaus. It's also like gothic in that Hammer horror way. And Subspecies nails all of that. It's also got, you know, kind of those things that when you're like a young person and you're like, you're going to the video store, you're watching cable, and you're like, oh my God, there's boobs. It's got that too. Like, it's got
confirm, Heather, can confirm.
See?
You introduced me to Subspecies last year. I think it was the year before at this point.
It was, yeah. See, and don't you feel like your life is all the richer for it?
I'm still waiting for us to cover on the Culture Cast the most recent Subspecies film that somehow came out in 2023.
I have it. I got it on Blu-ray real recently. So I've got that.
And that's the crazy thing. Like, it's such a kind of, I don't know, important or commercially viable, but it's a franchise that people clearly cared enough about to warrant another movie being made that people went and saw, and it came out in theaters even. It's not like it just came out on Blu-ray. It did come out in theaters, right?
Yeah. Unfortunately, nowhere near me because I'm being punished for apparently sins I did in a past life. But the world building that is done in those films is so it's tight. I don't count four's dodgy, but those first three I think are, I mean, some of the best horror in general, not just vampires. So you know, and the characters, I mean, Radu to me is iconic, and all those I think it's actually pronounced Anos Hove, who was like, he was best known before then as Faison, who was like the villain character on General Hospital. Like, but the guy's also worked with Lars von Trier. Like, his filmography's nuts. And he's brilliant. He's such a great actor. You know, then you get Denise Duff. I mean, she's not in the first one. Like, that's a different Michelle, but she comes into play in 2 and 3 and 4 and 5. And she's great. She has great chemistry with him. Just phenomenal writing, great characters, great atmosphere. Just, I can't recommend the series enough. You know, it's, I can't wait to see 5. I've been saving it like a fine bottle of wine. I think also I was so disappointed with 4, like that, you know, I was like, oh God, don't disappoint me. But the trailer for 5 looks great. It looks so great. And it looks like they're going kind of a prequel route. And so kind of doing that story building thing. And I love Ted Nicolau. He's such a great and kind of underrated cult film guy. I mean, he, you know, did Terror Vision. He did, I mean, even Bad Channels, which is spotty, but it's got some really cool stuff about it. Like, and that's the thing, Nicolau, even when he's on a film that's like, okay, there's still bright spots. Like, I think he's such a cool guy and such a cool director. With that, Vampire Journals is adjacent to that. I do recommend, especially if you love gothic cheese. It's a little cheesy, but that's okay. We get a line that says she reeked of evil, which I love that line because it's like you could make kind of a joke like, "Ooh, what's that smell?" Evil. It's evil. But and it's got David Gunn, who's a really, really great. If anybody's ever seen Mike Mendez's first film Killers, David Gunn's in that, and he's phenomenal. Like that's a guy that really should have had a bigger career, but he's great in Vampire Journals. And speaking of Gothic culture, am I derailing? I feel like I'm just like, you guys are just letting me go full
We have to let you talk about this, and then we'll ask you the questions.
I love that. Okay,
because again, you're the expert here. We're listening.
Oh my gosh, thank you.
This is like a Rodney Dangerfield. We're not laughing at the jokes, not because they're not funny. We're just sitting here listening.
Another film, and this is a film I've seen people kind of dog on, but I will go to bat for it. I love it so much, and that's 1998's Razorblade Smile, and this was directed by Jake West. And this is independent British cinema. Of course, anybody that's familiar with like Redemption Video, and and they had some of the most hilarious, like just bonkers intros to Redemption films. I don't know. I don't think they do this that much with the DVDs, but if you got like a tape in the 90s, they'd have these intros with Eileen Daly, who was like their icon. And she was this vampire woman, and she was always like hang out with these huge breasted vampire women. And some of those girls were very augmented. It was just like breast implants of the damned. But I love Eileen Daly. And Razorblade Smile, we have her as Lilith Silver, who's a vampire hit woman. And she is so great. I think Eileen Daly, when people talk about like scream queens and women of horror, I want them to say her name because she's sexy, she's beautiful, she's campy, vampy, she's got great presence, she has such fun with acting. I think she's great. I adore this woman, and she's so great here as Lilith. And there are moments where she's able to bring like sadness. It's not just all like sexy hit woman in latex. I mean, that's a lot of it. But she has like different dimensions, and it's such a cool film. I feel like whoever saw Underworld definitely saw this movie and maybe took a lot from it and kind of ripped it off. And if you see them, you'll see what I'm saying. I was going
to ask you about that with the leather. Yeah. Like, why the leather? Like, why the leather in the vampire like subculture of the movies? Like, why the leather?
Because it looks. I mean, it's because it
looks cool, right?
Yeah. I mean, is it the most practical? I mean, especially vinyl. Leather at least is thick and will kind of insulate you, and vinyl probably is very impractical as far as like if you're actually going to do a lot of physical stuff, but it's a great look. And the thing with Razorblade Smile, I mean, there are parts that legit are in a goth club. Like they use parts of Bela Lugosi's Dead by Bauhaus, which of course was used in The Hunger. But I mean, she's hanging out with these goths and they're all talking about what they think vampires would be. And they don't know that she's a real vampire. And it's so cute, and it's handled, I think, in such a clever, like cheeky way. I love it. Jake West would go on to make the Video Nasties documentary. That's excellent, and just seems like a very I adore this film, Razorblade Smile. And from the sublime to the wonderfully ridiculous, I have to start. And this is a film that is more recent in my atmosphere because these other films are films I definitely saw as a teenager. But I got to talk about Donald Farmer's Vampire Cop. He's a cop and he's a vampire. This is 1990. Especially as I've gotten older, I really love this is true independent. I've really, especially of late, I've gotten into a lot of shot of video stuff and underground cinema because I think there's so many gems there. Vampire Cop is, I mean, I'm not going to say it's a masterpiece, but it is so much fun. And the reason it's on my list, I have a dream that I'm gonna somehow make happen someday. I want to do a remake of this film, and I want to have Dick Valentine from Electric Six as the villain. put this out on Instagram like a year or two ago, and he liked it, and he started following me. I'm taking it as a sign from the universe. And I want Ted Pryor, who, Chris, we need to do Sledgehammer someday. I don't know, have you ever seen Sledgehammer, Ryan? It's
SOVs too, right?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, I think I have that.
Oh my God. I love Sledgehammer. Ted Pryor is the man, because he's like this, I mean, yes, he's it's like muscly, blonde, gorgeous guy, but he does things in Sledgehammer. Like, he balances his beer on his fiance's head in the romantic interlude. Oh, I live for Sledgehammer. We got to do it someday. And I want Ted Pryor in it. So this is selfish, but that's why I had to bring up Vampire Cop. Also, it's got the best theme song. It's total like 80s, like just like nut hugging cheese rock. And it's like if Natty Ice was a Vampire Cop theme song. So, and I don't even drink anymore, but I remember. You never forget drinking natural ice. The next one is Blood and Donuts. This is a Canadian film, 1995. I think it's such a unique film. Instead of going for sort of a gothic kind of spin, it's very much almost like a, just very quirky. Like, anybody, if you think quirky independent film from the 90s, Blood and Donuts will fit whatever you're thinking of. but it's cool. It's got a great soundtrack, which is a mix of known songs. Like, I'm trying to think, Twilight Time. Was that the Platters? I don't know why I'm blanking on the part, but that's a classic piece of music. And the original soundtrack is done by Nash the Slash, who's one of my favorite musicians, violinist, prog rock legend, dressed up like the Mummy. Like, nobody knew his real name for a long time. So he's live for him. And a female director, which is really cool, Holly Dale, who's actually been very prolific in Canada. So cool movie. Also, Tale of a Vampire. This is 1992. We have another female director, which I think is neat. Shimako Sato. I wrote that down, that way I didn't mess it up. and Julian Sands, the late Julian Sands, that still bothers me having to say that. But and this is one, I think now it's on YouTube, but it's dying for a proper Blu-ray release in this country. Like, it's a really beautiful, very poetic. I just remember it feeling like a tone poem. It's been years since I've seen it, but it made an impression on me. And I will recommend somebody we were talking about before we recorded. If you go to Fangoria's website, Alexandra Heller-Nichols wrote an amazing piece on it for her Wild Women with Steak Knives column. So check that out. Then we have, I'm sorry, guys. I'm just going ragtime now. Two more. Midnight Kiss. This is from 1993. It's a little more, I feel like its depiction of women's a little, and this is coming from Miss Water Power over here, a little problematic, but I do think it's a really interesting film. And especially because the vampire in it, if you just look at him, it's like, okay, good looking guy, long blonde hair. But then he's very Southern, and he's acting like he's insane. And at one point he's reading Dracula and just laughing to himself going, oh, they got that wrong. And he's ripping pages out of it like a maniac. It's, I don't know. It's a film I have a soft spot for my heart, even though it's not one I feel like I can go to bat for super hard, like I can for Subspecies or Razorblade Smile, but I do enjoy it. And last, and this one actually I probably shouldn't even mention because my memory of it is the fussiest, but it has a performance I do adore, and it's always stayed with me. It's The Girl with the Hungry Eyes from 1995. And not to be confused with there's a short story of the same name, and there was a 60s adaptation. But the 90s one, I cannot recommend enough for Christina Fulton, who plays the titular girl. Her performance is so unique. And I mean, she's another one kind of like the actor in Midnight Kiss, where physically, I mean, she's beautiful, but she is so quirky. And just, it's almost like if you think if a vampire really existed, they wouldn't probably be all like, they wouldn't be just like a regular person if you talk to them. Like they would be, there could be something kind of mentally, not like mentally ill, but maybe just because it's like, what kind of existence? Like you're, living in tombs and feeding off the living, you might be a little daffy. I don't know. I enjoy it. And it's set in I think it's set in Miami, which I always find it interesting when you have like vampires, like gothic creatures in really sunny locales. Like another reason why I love H.D. Lewis's A Taste of Blood, which is a really great film. And I love that film, but that's the 60s. So I'll be good here. I'm sure I'm forgetting some. I'm sure when we get done with this, I'll be like, shit, I forgot this or that. But yeah, that's my list. So.
Well, moving on from this, we have the questions, of course, but one big thing is Chris and I are not experts on this topic, so this is going to be learning for us very much so tonight. I will reveal to you, and I'm going to do better this year, I promise. I've never seen Subspecies. I absolutely need to jump on it. I apologize.
The other tier snobbed. I know, but no, that's exciting because like lucky you, this gets to be a new experience for you. That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm excited to see these. The two that I had kind of sought out that were, I think, independent. I'd love to get confirmation because I have not checked up on these. I'm just coming to you, the expert. The Addiction, is that independent or is that written?
Yes. Oh my God. You know what's funny? This is so on brand for me. I got so lost in like the stuff that's probably a lot less, like, not all of it, but some of it a little less respectable. I'm like Vampire Cop, and I forgot the two like respectable. Yeah, no, The Addiction, that's Abel Ferrara. No, that's totally independent, and I love Abel. So I haven't seen. I have to confess, I haven't seen it, and that's a crime. I need to see that. And the other one is Nadia.
Yeah.
Which looks amazing, and that's another one I need to see. I love it that I've seen Vampire Cop and Midnight Kiss, but I haven't. I don't know. The heart wants what it wants, but I do actually want to see both of those films. But Nadia, I know, has I believe, is it David Cronenberg in it?
It's Blood and Donuts that has David Cronenberg in, isn't it?
Oh my God, he is in Blood and Donuts. He told me a while.
Canadian, that makes sense.
Oh my God, can we just talk about how much we love David Cronenberg?
David Lynch is in Nadia.
Shit.
Oh wow.
It's another auteur named David. Oh my God. Yeah.
Too many Davids.
Yes.
But it's surprising he wasn't in a movie called Blood and Donuts. Are these donuts
right?
okay?
Yes. I love David Cronenberg. I love it when Cronenberg pops up in movies.
I mean, Nightbreed.
Yeah. You're like, who's that weird handsome man with the good head of hair? Holy shit.
both cinematic Davids have good heads of hair on them.
They do. You're
Lynch
right.
And Cronenberg, yeah.
Lynch has a good...
Did you say my hair's good? I just like David
He's
Lynch.
got a coif.
I know. Perfect.
Yeah. But no, that's cool, right? About Subspecies. I mean, this is the thing, is like, it's the easiest thing in the world for anybody to be like, oh, I've seen nobody has seen everything.
Of course.
I always try to be very transparent, because I feel like, especially like if you're published, I used to have this trip when I was younger about being a published writer, and it's like, oh God, I haven't seen this or that. But then I was like, well, but who has? Like, most of us haven't. And that's okay. That is perfectly, there's so many movies, which is an awesome problem to have. Like, look at us. We get to see all these movies. Cool.
I think the only other one that I can think of that may be independent that I've seen is Pale Blood. Is that one you're familiar with?
Yes, Vinegar Syndrome.
Put that one out.
Yeah, in fact, I saw that. I remember renting that one as a kid because it has that beautiful cover, just that pale girl with the raven hair, and that George, I'm going to mispronounce his last name, Shakiris from West Side Story is the vampire in it. And
that's right.
Yeah.
That's a good one. I like that one quite a bit.
I have the Vinegar Syndrome, so I need to rewatch it because it's been years.
And I can say with absolute certainty, the only things that I have seen have more or less been because of you. Because I was racking my brain, I was like, Razorblade Smile sounds awfully familiar. A couple years ago, I think it was like pre-pandemic, I asked for like movie suggestions for October to like do a review every day. And I asked you for a couple, and that was one of them.
Yes.
And I remember watching. And then obviously you, Father Malone, and I did, Subspecies 1, 2, and 3.
Oh, it's so good.
Rod did it, and we would Rod do it again.
Right?
We have to, yeah.
Oh my God.
I mean, there are three more movies technically, right? Because isn't Vampire Journals is part of it, right?
It's part of it, but it's in that universe, but it doesn't have any of the main characters. So it's probably not a necessary watch, but I think it's a cool watch. And I think as a standalone, it's really good. I'm trying to remember the actor that plays Ash, like the vampire, you find out he's Radu's fledgling. And that's cool. And he's more of a foppish. I'm trying to remember that.
Are there any more finger creatures in those later movies?
Oh, unfortunately, there's not as many of the actual subspecies, but they're cute little dudes, aren't they?
Yeah. Ryan, I mean, you're just gonna have to join us for 4, 5, and 6.
Oh no!
You signed yourself up for that now, but you have to watch 1, 2, and 3 first. That's the thing.
Oh, absolutely. Since we started talking, they've already been placed into the wish list. So
they're so they're so beautiful, and the soundtrack alone. I actually made a mixtape for a friend of mine once. I believe it was Bill Ackerman, who we all love from supporting characters, and he was like, "Man, what's that? There's this like piece of classical like orchestral music," and I was like, "Dude, that's from Subspecies." It's so good. So I'm excited.
All right. That means it's probably time to go to our first question, which is best entry point. And really, the two that I was talking about, I probably are not the best entry points here. I'd love to hear what you're going to say is the best entry point for anybody that's never seen any 90s independent vampire films.
Well, it's I guess it depends on what flavor you're going for. I mean, my gut, my heart, Subspecies. I mean, it's but if you're going for more of a modern, I mean, they are set in modern times, but they have that old world kind of gothic horror to them. If you're wanting something that's almost like less horror and more kind of horror comedy, but kind of but odd, Blood and Donuts is a great kind of quirky, very cult. Some films you just see it even when they were fresh, you're like, that's a cult movie. That's 100%. That is Blood and Donuts. I gotta save Subspecies. I'd almost say Razorblade Smile, but man, that film, people either seem to really love it or they don't get it, and they don't like it, but they're wrong. No, I'm joking. I mean, she rates blood. I love that. Like when she like she has to feed on these henchmen that are all like hopped up on methamphetamine, and they get like an F, I think, because it's just like druggy, I mean, I've never done meth, but it seems like if you drink blood from somebody who did meth, it would taste probably pretty gnarly. Probably like a gas station burrito.
Start feeling bugs in your vampire teeth.
Yeah.
Bugs in my teeth.
Oh God. That is
I would agree with you. I would say, at least of what I have seen, I think the best entry point, it would be Subspecies, right? Like, I think at least that would be my answer. I don't have necessarily an answer to every one of these questions, but this is one of the, I think, one that I can answer. And I think, I mean, from what I've seen, like, it seems like, it does a good enough job at setting itself in modern times, but like you said, still having the things one might expect from a vampire movie. Period. Any kind of vampire movie. And then, Anders Hove is as good as Radu, if not amazing. So.
I love when he says, and Ryan, if this doesn't completely sell you even further, he actually says and I believe it's in the first one, he says, "Tonight there will be a bloodbath." And it's like the most metal. I mean, it's like if King Diamond wrote a vampire character, it would totally be Radu. It makes me so happy. I feel like there needs to be a crossover now. Black metal with Radu.
I just love how literally you started to sparkle speaking about Radu. That's the best part.
I love him.
He'd be really good at playing guitar.
Would you say he's a shredder?
Yeah, he's got long fingers.
Oh my God. He is a total rock star. So
well, and I think your point earlier on Full Moon is probably the best thing here is most people that are, at this rate, people from 50 to 28 listening to this now probably have at least one Full Moon film that they go, I mean, yeah, this one's really nostalgic. I still kind of really love it. And I mean, so many people are about Subspecies. Any other Full Moon titles that are your favorites that you want to shout out perhaps for just a moment?
Oh man, that's a fabulous question because now my brain's totally gonna lock up. Man, you actually won. Actually, two that come to mind. They both have Jeffrey Combs. Castle Freak. which is Stuart Gordon. And we all, I mean, anybody who's a horror kid, you should immediately have love in your heart for Stuart Gordon. Castle Freak's a really, I know people are probably like, Castle Freak sounds kind of like a 90s new metal band or something, but it's a really, really cool movie. Very heavy. It's actually got some really great like human gravitas. You got Barbara Crampton, get a little of that mini Reanimator reunion going. And she's, I mean, her and Combs both are such great actors. And I think it's a cool, I love it when horror can mix kind of these human stories, that especially stories that are not fun, that are like, oh God, this is sad and fucked up. And then but then you almost have like, okay, but there's this weird abused monster in this castle. And so you have another sad story, and it all kind of interconnects. And it's definitely on the heavier side. If you're thinking like it's, Reanimator, it's definitely a lot heavier than that. But I love that. I love it when horror can take you to kind of sad places too. And speaking of Combs, Dr. Mordred, which is totally like, my favorite superhero movies are always like, I can't tell you anything about MCU, but I could tell you I love Dr. Mordred.
There it is again. Every single episode it's going to come up. I knew it. We have a running joke now on this show where people are like, are you guys going to bring up the MCU every time? And we have every time.
Oh my gosh.
Today's secret word is MC.
Everyday secret word is MCU.
Oh my God. Well, damn it.
We didn't even have to do it this time. You did it for us.
Yeah, you're welcome. I don't know.
Yeah, thank you.
Dr. Mordred is it's a fun superhero movie. And I mean, but that's the thing. My kind of superhero is going to be Jeffrey Combs. Always. Like, I love him. Everybody, again, that's another one. Jeffrey Combs is the man. And it's just a really cute movie. That's kind of the fun thing with Full Moon. And even when they were Empire Pictures is, the diversity, and like sometimes they'll make stuff that you could show your kids, and then other times it's like
they did.
Probably don't show this to your kids, but
my answer to this question is a Moonbeam Video Zone movie, which was their children imprint. I'm not even joking. Should we answer, Ryan? I mean, I was going to
probably.
Ask, what's yours? What's yours, Ryan? You go first.
The amazing thing, somehow Chris and I have brought up Full Moon 4 times in the last week and have had this conversation already.
So, yeah.
The amazing thing is Castle Freak is my go-to answer for this. I truly love Castle Freak. It is heartbreaking and weird and actually dark for what Full Moon was doing around that time, which was kind of off-putting for some people, but it was perfect for me. It was exactly what I wanted to see then. And then the kid stuff, like I don't know why, I still love Prehysteria. I think it's really well done. It's super fun. Watching it back now, it's not really well done, but hey, it's fun. And then I think they just distributed it, but man, I adore Tourist Trap. I don't remember if they actually created that one, but Tourist Trap is almost like the perfect, weird, out in the middle of nowhere, like sideways type slasher that I just can get lost in that world and find myself genuinely creeped out by just some dude. Like there's not even anything super evil about this person. It's just some dude. And then you find out he is evil.
I love that. And David Schmoller he's made some of my favorite horror films. Like Tourist Trap and Crawl Space both, I think, are just stone cold classics.
Tourist Trap featuring Werewolf's own Chuck Connors.
Chuck Connors is so creepy.
He's great. God.
Like there was like a porn of him from the 50s. Yeah. Just saying. I don't know, but a friend of mine saw it and he said it was disturbing because he's like, Chuck Connors just looked really angry the whole time.
On brand.
Yeah, very on brand, but I'm like, I'm good. I don't need that in my brain. I just knowing it exists is too much. But yeah, Tourist Traps. Oh, yeah, that is effective. That's a great movie too, where whenever people are like, oh, something's low budget, man, you don't need a big budget to be effective.
Not at all.
Like, just gotta have an imagination.
Speaking of having an imagination, not too crazy of an imagination though, because hey, Home Alone is a pretty successful film franchise. The full Full Moon Video / Moonbeam Video Zone, because I didn't see any Full Moon videos growing up, but I saw Moonbeam, and I saw two. Ryan already mentioned Prehysteria, which is like a completely nutsoid movie, like still, like baby dinosaurs, named after, like, correct me if I'm wrong, one of them's named Elvis, one of them is named Madonna,
Something like that.
Oh,
yeah, it's like, it's literal insanity, but I don't know if it's as kind of like obvious of a ripoff of anything as Remote is, which is just Home Alone, but the kid, instead of making traps, just, uses like a remote control car or a remote control airplane, or the thing that the movie's really known for, and I swear to God, I'm not making this up, a remote control yodeling doll that does more action in the movie than anything else, including knocking over cans of beans, throwing thumbtacks into shoes, and it is like one of the strangest. I would love to know where one buys a doll like this, because I would like to own this thing, but it is a small lederhosen wearing man with a very questionable choice looking mustache, that's all I'll say. And then he's wearing like traditional German lederhosen, and he yodels the whole time. And it's a yodeling remote controlled doll, and it is like essentially the main character's this is what he uses the entire movie to outwit these criminals. It is, if it sounds like Home Alone, that's because it is Home Alone, but with not Macaulay Culkin. It's got Tony Longo and Richard Deal and Stuart Fratkin are the thieves. And then, beyond that, I can't remember the child actor, because, again, this is one of those movies where they went out of their way to cast people as the villains who were kind of known actors, and then the kid actors just like literally some kid. But I saw that movie a lot as a kid. And I saw it a lot, so much to the point where I remember the ads on the VHS, including one for, I believe, a film with Laura Flynn Boyle. And then there was an ad for episodes of Star Trek The Next Generation on VHS. So I don't know why. I don't know where that's coming from. But it was super weird. Remote. And you can watch it on YouTube now. There's like a 1080. Someone took the Blu-ray and just ripped it and put it on YouTube. God. So, I mean, again, I believe it has a physical release. Correct me if I'm wrong.
It does.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Well, I would encourage people to go Full Moon. You can still buy from support if you can support physical media. I'm just saying they have really good sales on that site though, because that's how I got that Tourist Trap Blu-ray.
Yep. Most of the titles we're talking about are usually $10, and if you get, I think, 5, it's free shipping. So
yeah.
Don't watch it on YouTube. I mean, I wasn't advocating for that, but like, if you wanted to watch it right now and not wait, it's more of like an immediate gratification type thing. I'm not advocating pirating, but hey, to be fair, you're just watching it. You didn't pirate it.
Well, I'm all for pirating of something. I'm not,
Yeah, I mean, I am too, but like, I gotta seem respectable here.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I mean, that's
I don't have all the DVDs behind me like Ryan does. Where's all your DVDs, Chris? I thought you liked movies. What?
Well, I will say, actually, the thing that is cool about stuff like that, it's a good way to kind of be an informed buyer, because like that's the thing, you could kind of watch it, and if you're like, you know what, I dig this, then you could go to Full Moon. If it's not your flavor, you save some money. But they have many other movies, and they sometimes will even they one time threw in a free movie.
Yep.
So I now have 2 copies of Fairy Tales, the softcore,
the adult.
Yeah. So maybe I'll do a giveaway or something someday with that. But yeah, now I love it that you both have this diverse history with Full Moon. I mean, Richard Band and Charles Band have touched our lives in all sort of different ways. I think when you're like a cult horror movie person.
Close friend of mine, Jess Byard, is an assistant director on Baby Oopsie, which was a Full Moon movie. So
I didn't know Jess was on that. That's so
Jess
rad.
has worked on a couple Full Moon productions, I'm pretty sure.
And Jess
the other day they were like, Charles Band just texted me, and I was like, what?
Okay, Captain Fancy. Jeez.
Yeah, Captain Cool Guy.
Should probably throw out all of these too. I believe Full Moon's one of the only boutique labels that has a streaming service. You can go and subscribe to them, and a lot of times if you subscribe for the year, they'll send you like the Puppet Master box set for free.
And that's a lot of movies.
Yeah, what about Evil Bong or Ginger Dead Man? Also great ones. Also covered by Elvira on Peacock. for Elvira's 13. I think Elvira's 13 Days of Horror on Peacock is only full moon movies.
Oh, wow.
Right, yeah. So it's like, because I know she does Ginger Dead Man, and I think she might do Evil Bong as well. But I believe it's all full moon movies, which, like, I mean, smart, good on them, right? Like, good idea. Get her to host a movie thing of those movies, right?
That is wild. Because I saw her, like, when she was doing, when she came back on Shudder. And she did two of my favorite movies, and they're wildly different, because one was Messiah of Evil, which is a brilliant. Have you seen Messiah of Evil? Oh my God, Chris. It's brilliant. It is a masterpiece. You must see it. Oh God, Hobgoblins. I love Hobgoblins.
Hobgoblins is a good one.
Hobgoblins, like, my heart lives at what's it? Club Scum. I love Club Scum. And plus Darren Norris is in it. Everybody knows him as a voice actor, but Darren Norris is the man. Just saying. He's the MC of Club Scum. If you love Joel Grey and Cabaret, but if he was like in a new wave band, and also maybe on, I don't know. I don't know where I'm going with this. It's just see Subspecies, then see Hobgoblins.
The Hobgoblins are cute too.
They are so cute. I mean, they're literally, like, I don't even know if they're puppets. I think they're just dolls.
Yeah, I think so.
But they're cute, and they have abs. It's like
they're yoked. They're yoked.
Yoked.
They're yoked.
They're swolitarians.
Yeah.
For sure.
Well, after a long discussion on full moon, probably a good time for our second question. And love to hear what you're going to say here. So this one, we usually just call it deep cut, but the real thing here is, what is a good film that somebody could look at as a second watch from the genre? They watch your first watch, they love it. What's the next one that's not just a deep cut, but one that is really good, but it's also like kind of bonkers? That would be kind of a rough first watch that could turn some people away, but it might solidify your love for this genre.
Ooh. Oh, that's a great question. I love that. I would say it's going to be, I think, a tie between Razorblade Smile and Midnight Kiss. And for different reasons. Because Razorblade Smile, I think, it has like a very like creative, like what some people would call like a music video style edit. I actually am sort of a low-key music video, just like total nerd. I was about to say historian, but I feel like that's like, I feel like you don't get to ever call yourself that. I feel like that's something somebody has to call you. So, it's
You're a historian, Heather. There you go.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you.
You're welcome.
But it does have a music video style edit, and it's very creative, and it's got some, very elaborate visuals, and, and it has a lot of fun with itself. And I think sometimes, which is weird, because I think like some of my favorite vampire movies think about Polanski's The Fearless Vampire Killers. That's a vampire film that has a lot of fun with itself. But yeah, Razorblade Smile, and also, but with Midnight Kiss, it's a little it's kind of spotty as a movie, and some of the characters are very off-putting, but yet it is committed to something that is very sort of like, it's sort of like a made for TV vibe, but sleazy. And the vampire is not sexy. Like, you think he's going to be sexy, and the women love him like he's sexy, but he's so fucking nuts. Like, but that's one of the reasons I love about it. And there is like an aesthetic there. I don't know if it makes me think of USA, like movies you would see on USA Up All Night, kind of like, that's an aesthetic. And I definitely, like, as a kid, grew up watching that. Maybe that's what it is. It has, it's off-putting, but I think there's enough there. There's a charm there. A weird charm is maybe not the word I'm looking for, but I don't know. I enjoy it. I do think it's interesting. And I can see somebody going back to that and being like, it's not my favorite movie in the world, but there is something interesting there. And there's so many boring movies out there. I think if a film can give you something to think about and chew on, even if it's just like, wow, like, I kind of like it sometimes when a film is just like, you know what, we're not going to make this character, sexy or likable. Like, we're going to kind of make them a piece of shit. And that can work against you too, depending on the actor, and the writing. But But yeah, I would say it's a tie between those. But I would definitely say Razorblade Smile is a better movie.
I've been hearing about Razorblade Smile for years. I really need to see this one already.
It's so, and the acting, David Warbeck has a small part in it. Who's an icon. Like, of course, I mean, I think most people probably know him from The Beyond, which is my favorite Lucio Fulci movie, and probably my favorite zombie movie. That's not Romero or Return of the Living Dead. That's a hard question, but but The Beyond is brilliant. It's so brilliant, and I love David Warbeck. He's also in Fatal Frames, which if we were doing weird giallos from the 1990s, that would easily be on my list. I love Fatal Frames, but yeah, David Warbeck, I think that was his last role, and he's credited as quote unquote the horror movie man. So
That's a hell of a credit.
I wouldn't want to be credited as that, frankly.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, a zombie discussion is probably a good way to lead into the next question, which this one's always fun, because even listening to you talk on this and being so passionate about the titles, I can't even imagine what you're going to answer for this. And that is, what part of this microgenre do you feel like has had the biggest impact on pop culture? Because not all of these are going to, needle their way into the zeitgeist. Not all of these are going to be long lasting for decades to come. Not all of these are going to get a big deluxe Blu-ray release from one of these boutique companies. But what about either this genre or this time of vampire films? What do you think has had the biggest overall impact on pop culture?
Probably, yeah, actually, honestly, probably Razorblade Smile. Just if anything, for the I really, in my heart of hearts, feel like Underworld owes a lot to it. It's like, that was obviously was a very popular franchise in series, but restrained. And that's the thing, like, Razorblade Smile is very unrestrained. Like, Lilith is very full-on bisexual goddess, killer, vamp. Like, she's, she's not a Kate Beckinsale. She is a pinup model. Like, Kate Beckinsale is beautiful, but you know what I mean? Like, it's more like, we don't want to go too boobular, so we get Underworld, Is boobular word?
It is now.
It is now.
Boobular dudes.
But on top of that, like, it's also incorporated. It's actually having like authentic Gothic subculture and characters, because I feel like that's something that is usually pretty much misunderstood and misrepresented in a lot of films, especially like in Hollywood films, where it's, like, oh, we're so depressed when we're all black and listen to Fear Factory. I don't know. It's just like they always fuck it up. It's like Dracula 2000. I mean, I know this isn't quite goth, but, well, that movie is definitely not goth. But Gerard Butler's playing Dracula. Gothic icon, in my opinion. And he goes to a tower, I believe at Tower Records, and looks up at the screen and he sees a monster magnet. And he's like, brilliant, or something like that, like, wonderful. And it's like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, Dracula, the Prince of Darkness, the blood-sucking king, who we find out in that universe is literally Judas Iscariot, too. Which makes it even more just like, wow, your taste sucks. Is that why you betrayed Jesus? Because you liked a new metal that was like stoner? I mean, it's not even good stoner rock. Like, I mean, I don't know if Electric Wizard were around when that movie came out. Probably not, but I don't know. That's a whole other rant.
Everybody that's seen Jesus Christ Superstar knows that Judas betrayed him because they had heaven on their minds, Heather.
Oh my God. Don't even, Chris, you're going to get me going. Because, I actually do love the original soundtrack for Jesus Christ Superstar.
So do I.
Yeah, but who sings as Jesus is Ian Gillan from fucking Deep Purple and Black Sabbath, baby.
That's right.
I love Ian Gillan. Legit. Why isn't he in a vampire movie? I would watch that. So, I don't know. With the pop culture question, those would probably be the two, because honestly, Subspecies should have had a bigger impact on it in a just world, but we don't always live in a just world. That's why I consider ourselves cultural champions. We are freedom fighters of good art and arguable taste. So, at least me. But,
Heather, can't speak for you two.
The arguable taste. The others on my list, probably not so much. Midnight Kiss, realistically, I actually had to double check because I thought it was 80s. And it's 93. But, you know, decades don't end cleanly, or very rarely. So sometimes you'll see something from like an early part of a decade. Like you'll see a movie from 81 and you're like, oh, I thought that was 70s, you know, because it still has that kind of flavor to it.
Right.
But yeah. And the other ones are just too deep. I mean, Tale of a Vampire is really its own thing. And it's definitely gothic, but in its own, but not like, again, not like Sisters of Mercy gothic, more like vampire, traditional vampire gothic, I guess. But yeah, I wish all of these films would have had a bigger. Because you're right, we haven't really had a major vampire. Because even the vampire films that have surfaced to the mainstream, I guess Underworld would be the biggest one.
There's one other pretty big one.
What?
Those vampires sparkle in the sunlight.
Oh, I don't fucking count that shit. No,
I count it because that's vampires.
Bullshit. No, Our Lady. no. Hear me out. Our Lady of the Gothic Manners, Miss Gillian Venters from Gothic Charm School, who's fabulous. She has the most brilliant theory. She considers those vampires to be deeply confused elves.
Okay.
And I'm down with that because those vampires my ass. That is I'm offended on behalf of a fake supernatural creature because I'm like, they don't have teeth. I'm not seeing a lot of bloodthirst. I'm just seeing like guys. And what is this where this guy who's like, and this is another vampire films too, but at least in those films, the vampire's the villain, where this guy's like over 100 years old and he's like dating a teenager. I mean, are they Ted Nugent? Is he the Ted Nugent of vampire culture? You know, but we're supposed to think, oh, that's so romantic. No, he's literally acting like he's a teenager to prey on this girl. That's a pedophile. Like, creepy. And he's not even glittery in a cool, like, David Bowie kind of way. Or Iggy Pop at his most, like, manic and, you know, on substances. But and Iggy was dating teenagers too. At least he doesn't do it anymore. We love Iggy. 70s were not a good time probably for role models. But you know, I can't with it. I can't.
I get it. I mean, I get it. I watched it with my wife during the pandemic. I see the appeal. It's not for me, but I get it. I mean, I get why it was popular. Like, I get why it was popular. It for me reminds me, because you've already mentioned Walking Dead, Ryan. Like, Twilight is what is to vampires as Walking Dead is to zombies. Like, they just like beat it into the ground. And like, did you know that on The Walking Dead are the people? Like, nobody cares, okay? Like, I'm done with that. I think most people are done with it. If anybody's still watching it, they must be hate watching it, because I don't think anybody enjoys that show anymore, at least not the way that they used to. And like, I think vampires need a second chance at I mean, like, but that's the thing, like, what about What We Do in the Shadows? Is that not, like, the vampire thing of right now that is, like, insanely popular, that everybody loves? Like, you were mentioning earlier, Heather, you know, like, unhinged vampires, and all I could think of is Matthew Barry. Like, that's all I could think of, like, an unhinged vampire. Like, listen here, me old fruit. Like, that's what I think of when I think of a truly unhinged vampire.
Time, boy. I mean,
yeah, that's what I think of when I think of, like, vampires now. And I mean, like, that's a show that's, like, my wife puts it on in the background, and, like, she loves that show. So for me, like, vampires just, it's now less about them being scary and more like, let's actually, like, analyze vampires as if they were just, like, you know, just like us.
Vampires are people too. Actually,
Right.
I
not all vampires.
I do love What We Do in the Shadows, like the TV show, and Nadia is my vampire queen. Like, she is life goals for me. I adore. She is everything I aspire to be as a person. That means I probably have a lot of issues, but that's okay.
And everybody knows that they're horny for love and they're horny for blood.
Again, that's so. And Matt Berry for me is one of the biggest. Like, I love him and everything. To me, he's one of the best things that have come out in the world of TV and music. He's a really fucking talented musician. Like, I really recommend anybody checking out like his music, because he's a fascinating cat. Like, he's made some really just beautiful and kind of like sad and evocative music. And also, I can connect him to Razorblade Smile because he was part of a 1-season show called Snuff Box, which I highly recommend. If you love Matt Berry, check out Snuff Box, him and Rich Folger. It's definitely black comedy. This is like, it goes dark. It goes very dark, but it's so good. Eileen Daly is in 1 or 2 episodes of Snuff Box, and her and Matt Berry are friends in real life. So, bam!
How has she not been in the show yet?
Seriously, well, I feel like he's not probably behind the scenes creative, like, because I think he was like I'd have to double check. I mean, he wrote the song for Stuff Box. Like, I definitely get the feeling he was more creatively involved behind the scenes with that. It was definitely a smaller production too than what we do in the shadows. I don't know. They should have Eileen Daly. If Takiki Watiti, I'm saying his name wrong.
Kiki Waititi.
Thank you.
Oh, I love that.
This is Taika Waititi.
Taika, yeah.
Chris and I both.
I was like, yeah, whatever.
At least I didn't make it sound like I'd say what's hitty or something. But it's, and nobody should be offended by it. He's way more famous and rich than we'll probably ever be. But he's talented. But like, he should have, if he watches this, sir, we respect you. Get Eileen Daly on your show because she's awesome, and she also knows Danny Filth from Cradle of Filth. I love that. I want to go to a dinner party at her house. Like, shit, like, yeah, go there and Matt Berry and a member of Cradle of Filth. It make me happy.
Didn't Danny do a vampire movie or something like that around like 2000?
He hosted an anthology film called Cradle of Fear.
Okay,
and Eileen Daly is in that.
There we go.
But yeah, I love that her and Matt Berry are friends. Legit. Like, that's so cool. I don't know if they're still friends, but I know maybe they had a falling out. Maybe that's I don't know. I shouldn't say that. But no, I do like that show. And I know there was like that Demeter.
Yeah. But
it looks so CGI. Like, this is where I get kind of weird and nerdy about stuff, about cinema, is like, if I don't, because some films use so much CGI that I feel like it's almost like when I see animation, if I don't like how something looks visually, because animation's so visual, then I can't really commit to watching it, because I just get like, oh, I don't want to put my eyes on this for 90 minutes or 120 minutes or whatever. And I don't like the look of most CGI, because I just feel like most of it just looks rote. I don't think it, I actually feel like I've seen more creative computer animation and art in video games than I see in Hollywood products. Like that Resident Evil Village, and that's got a great vampire character in it.
Sure does. Oh boy, doesn't it?
Yeah, who became like, there's a lot of pervy fan art.
Whoa. You know what? Just because they want to be stepped on by a giant vampire lady doesn't make them perverts. It just makes
or smothered in her
large breasts.
Voluptuous her vampire tatas. Anyone can play them. Like, I mean, there are worse ways to go out in this life. But I mean, the animation in that game is gorgeous. Like like that game looks so beautiful. I mean, I can look at that and be like, I like looking at this. And yet when I see CGI used in a lot of Hollywood films, I'm like, I'm good. Don't need to, I don't know. It just doesn't engage me.
I watched that Demeter movie and it was fine. It was just like Alien on a boat with a vampire.
I see. It just doesn't.
It was fine, like I didn't. Yeah. It wasn't more than it needed to be, and I don't know. I mean, look, someone was like, let's adapt one chapter of Dracula. Like,
one of the shortest chapters, by the way, because I've read Dracula a number of times over. I mean, of course I have over the years, and yeah, I mean. I think it would make a great short film with practical effects. I really would love to see horror. Like, that's the other thing about watching like older movies, is that those practical effects, even like, I mean, look at Tourist Trap. I mean, some of those are just, they're literal mannequins, but the way they're used, fucking unsettling, I just think it's really hard for stuff that doesn't have an organic texture to have that. I'm not saying it's impossible. And there are films I really love and enjoy that use CGI. I just think it's a little more tricky to pull off. Sorry, that was a bit of a
It's a fun tangent.
Okay.
It's a worthwhile tangent to beat into the ground over and over.
This is true. I've not heard my favorite vampire thing mentioned since 2000, and that probably let the right one in. How do you feel about that one?
Oh my God. I have to confess. That is on my watch list. I have not seen it yet. And that's fucking ridiculous. My husband has seen it. And he loved it.
I think you'll love it. Yeah.
Yeah.
The love story side of it and just the innocent, like, blooming development of these characters, I think you'll truly appreciate.
Oh, it looks amazing. No, I'm looking forward to. I don't know about you guys. Do you have a watch list that is like the size of, I don't know, the Bible?
Yep.
Yeah.
Or a girthier Russian novel. Like, oh my God. No, I need to get to that one. It looks, I mean, I've heard the Hollywood remakes even good, but of course I'm going for the foreign, not terrible.
Helmed by 1 degree of Kevin Bacon away, a friend of Richard Haddam, Matt Reeve. Richard's, college roommate, who's now directed The Batman. So there you go.
The Batman.
Speaking of indie films, I guess.
Yeah. And speaking of sparkling vampire people.
The Batman. I just say that just makes me think of that scene of Barfly, where like Mickey Rourke, like Henry Chinaski, like is arguing with Frank Stallone, and he's like, "You got lucky last time. I had the flu." He's like, "What's it gonna be next time, Eddie? The 8?" Like that. That's my favorite Batman. Yeah, but no, I do need to see Let the Right One In. So thank you for bringing that back to my forefront brain when I was too busy watching Vampire Cop in its Hot Bods contest section, which is in the movie.
Well, and the other aspect of this whole pop culture question is it could be like a philosophical idea. And obviously it would be sort of, remiss to not bring up that this was kind of like the hotbed of goths. I mean, this is where we got like The Craft gets super important. The uprising of Hot Topic, The Crow was huge. There's so much of this that obviously some of it's a little cringe to look back on, but it's really like a lot of people, myself included, found a lot of identities during this time. That was just, we were all pale wearing black, and that's the identity.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, I was one of those kids. I love The Craft. I still love The Craft, The Crow, even its soundtrack. Like, I never actually owned it, but I could probably tell you a good amount what's on it just because it was in the sphere. And certainly, like, I think every friend I had, all 3 of them or something in high school had it. And I remember, Hot Topic, one of my favorite goth comps I have ever bought in the wild, I got at a Hot Topic. Which is like, it's probably dates me all the fuck.
They sell Funko Pops now.
They do. I still regret, like, they once had that Young Bucks Funko Pop. I'm also a wrestling nerd for anybody watching or listening, and I still regret not getting it because I love the Young Bucks. But and they're not vampires. They're not Kevin Thorne.
Yeah, I was saying there are wrestling vampires though. If you want to go down that route,
Vampiro,
Gangrel, Edge and Christian, technically.
The Brood. Oh God, I love. That's from the 90s. Like,
that red fluid. They're being covered in that red liquid. They called it blood one time. The Brood had that sick entrance theme too. Like that was so good. Yeah, I honestly that would have been my answer. Like the biggest impact on pop culture would have been in the 90s, like it making its way into pro wrestling, which was bigger than it's ever been in the 90s, and that was like those characters are clearly influenced by 90s vampire stuff because they showed up in like leather or like vinyl and like all just like nonsensy stuff of just like the whitest white man's interpretation of something fun, like
and the white ruffly shirt,
right? It was like all very even though it was the 90s in wrestling, which was pretty cutting edge in terms of like boundary pushing, the red liquid thing was so they're covered in a red liquid. It's called blood, guys. It's called blood. You just call it what it's blood. If they're supposed to be vampires, it's blood.
Oh, that's so Tubby. Well, that's so McMahon.
Yeah, that's a red liquid.
That's a whole other tangent. But yeah, no, it's I do. Yeah, I mean that's so true. And I mean with 90s goth culture too. It's funny because I've actually seen like a nostalgia for like mall goth pop up on Tumblr, and I find that so cool because I've known I hate gatekeeping in any culture, and I know with with some goths, or like, oh, if it's not traditional goth, it's not goth, or they call them all goth posers. But it's like, but if you live in the Midwest, or you live in the South, or you just live in like a small town or like a suburb, you don't have, I didn't have access to a proper goth club, I found out later on, after the fact, there was like a tiny goth scene, in the adjacent town. But it was kind of scattered, and I don't know, I was like such a weird kind of bird anyways. Like I didn't, I don't fit in cleanly to any subculture realistically, because it's like, oh, you like glitter, or you like pink, or you keep talking about wrestling or water power. But no. That is fascinating. I never really thought about it like that, how the 90s you did have that with vampires, and like, what would that, and I mean, you still continually have vampire cinema. I know there's a newer movie that's out where it's basically, I'm trying to think of I just saw the trailer for it recently. And I want to say it's from Argentina, where it's like literally making Pinochet, who is a real, and I just hit my mic, I am so sorry. Yeah, professional over here. Like Pinochet, who was obviously a real life dictator, but it's clearly Pinochet as a vampire. I think it's called The Count. The trailer looks interesting. So I like that. Of course, I think with foreign films, you're always, because like, let the right one in, you're always going to find an interesting twist on it. And of course, like when you go to other countries, it's like, and this is something I need to explore more, that I want to, is like with, like I believe with China, like you have the hopping vampires.
Yeah, Mike White's a huge fan of those.
That's so cool. But that's the thing. Vampire myths are part of every culture. Every culture across the world has a different spin on the vampire mythos. And I think that's neat. Like, you can expand upon that. That's actually one of the things I love about Subspecies, is that we have Radu, who isn't classically good looking. Like, he's kind of more monstrous looking. And you even have like the long claws that are like a throwback to Nosferatu. And he still has like sadness, but he's also bloodthirsty. He's just, oh, sorry. I'm like, fangirling over here. Like, you can have your fucking Twilight. Give me Radu. But, and with the first one, they have like his half brother Stefan, who's like kind of the character you would expect to see, I think, in a 90s vampire movie, where he's like the sensitive, romantic, handsome vampire, but he's boring, and he, I won't spoil anything because you haven't seen it, Ryan, but Radu's the star, don't you worry. Like, he, I'm like, oh, there's my boy, like, I just get so excited seeing him. But I don't know, I would love to see, I'd like to see more vampires in cinema, especially like yeah, let's go old school to the point where it's like we can't define it either. Yeah. Like, let's get let's make it interesting. And I'm sure like those films already exist. We just got to find them. We just got to, that's why it's good doing podcasts like this, is I have no doubt we're all going to hear from people that are going to be like, have you seen this? And it's like, ooh, not yet. Yeah. But
and there's a bunch of smaller ones, especially in the 2000s. Like Stakeland was another one that was really damn good. That came out. But we're not getting like a big vampire movie every year. And in the 90s, it really was. Like, every year there was something getting advertised that was a vampire. And now that everybody's obsessed with genres, like, they buried it. And not to make it about zombies, we need to resurrect them again. We need to bring them back. We need to find a way to get that cycle going in the other direction.
Right. Yeah, agreed. And I kind of hate that, because, man, I love zombie movies. Yeah, I'm a monster kid. Of course I did. And I got so burnt out that for years and years, even if somebody was like, oh no, I actually saw a zombie movie that was good, I'm like, you know what? It's not for me right now. Right. And I hated being like that. I don't like being like that. I don't like being closed-minded. But if you just don't feel like watching something, you don't feel like watching it. You can't help it. You can't force it. Like, if you force yourself to watch something you don't want to watch, if you get cranky enough, you're just not going to enjoy it and be open to it like you should. Anytime you watch anything, the goal is to go into it and be open completely to the experience of it. And so like, if I can feel that I'm clenching, where I'm like, oh, I don't want to watch it, I gotta wait till I'm ready. And I think most of us are probably like that. I'm almost now to the point where I'm open to watching zombie stuff again just now. It's taken this long. And I can understand if some people, like, because I know not everybody loves vampires. I know Harlan Ellison famously was not a fan of vampires as a creature. And I love Harlan Ellison. Harlan, one of the most brilliant writers, like, ever. So I get it if somebody's not into it. But I love them. I don't know. And you kind of think, because for a long time we did have such a glut of vampires, too, because, like, for independent cinema, I mean, that's a cheap effect. Like Subspecies actually gets like some gold stars just because it's like they had to do a lot more special effects on that movie than a standard. But with most vampire movies, it's usually like fangs and some blood, right. Maybe a little bit of flesh, flesh torn, and a stake effect. I mean, not. I'm being overly generalizing. Good Lord. Yes, raconteur, ladies and gentlemen. But I'm generalizing here, but I mean that's always been kind of one of the things. Like, what are the two like cheapest types of horror movies you can do? A slasher and a vampire.
Yeah, it's true.
But that's not a bad thing. That just means like, especially if you're a really creative writer and director, like, okay, you've got this seemingly simple premise. What can you do to make yours stand out? What can you explore that somebody else hasn't? And that's how you get some of these great movies.
Like Near Dark, which none of us have mentioned.
But it's not 90s. That's why
well, you guys mentioned 2000s. I figure 87. I would say Near Dark is a pretty good predecessor to what would be happening in the 90s, because they're wearing like leathery, they're going in that direction. That movie could have come out in the 90s, and I think it probably would have been just as like well placed. I think maybe if not more so well placed. Near Dark is one of my favorite movies ever. Like, I love every frame of that movie. It also, like, you want to talk about fangirling? I'm sorry, Lance Henriksen and Bill Paxton and Jeanette Goldstein in a vampire clan. Oh, honey, I would have been just like juggle. Oh no, I cut myself. Oh no. I would have. So, of course, but then, oh my God, but then I say that kid, Josh Miller, one of the creepiest characters ever, like creepiest vampires ever, is that little kid in Near Dark. I do covet his William S. Burroughs shirt. That shirt is sick. I want it. No, I love that movie. But Near Dark also has like a timelessness about it too, because it's a Western, right?
So to me, it's almost like, it's like part road trip movie, part Western, part, it's so Americana. And that actually, the thing I do love about the film, it's totally, because a lot of American vampire films still owe so much to like a European, how we view European vampires, especially like with Hammer. I mean, or, you go back to Lugosi's Dracula, there's always a sexy European aspect. And Near Dark, even, it's not just that it's America and they're Americans, like it feels like the Midwest. Yep. They're in Oklahoma. You've got the oil drills. You right down to the rural family with Tim Thomerson, who's in Full Moon's Trancers, and Dollman. Oh my God. How did we not even mention Dollman?
Elvira covers Dollman on Peacock's TV, 13 Days of Elvira. That's how I've seen Dollman, which could not believe was an actual film that my eyes were seeing, but yet I watched almost all of it.
God, Tim Thomerson, that's another cat. He's one of those character actors. The minute I see his name on something, I'm like, yes, fucking A. I love him. Like, he's
Dollman.
Oh my, and he's in Fade to Black, like, which, oh my, speaking of great horror movies from the 80s, Fade to Black, and he plays the harmonica in it. I'm just saying, if you want to see Dollman play the harmonica.
Dollman.
On being open to things, that brings us to our fourth question, probably, which, God, am I interested to hear what you're going to say for this. So what is another, we'll say like micro genre, or maybe like a slice of film history, that if somebody's really entranced by that era, what do you think is most similar that they could go, yeah, maybe I would want to dive into 90s independent vampire movies?
Oh, wow. So I recommend another era or another movie?
Something that somebody else is already into, something, and it's similar to this, like maybe a similar vibe or a similar movement in film?
Ooh, that's an interesting question, especially because I don't know if I like when I recommend stuff to people, I'm usually like so lost in my own sort of love spiral.
See, and what's funny is I've been thinking about this all night. I kind of have the feeling that if you are nostalgic for 90s music videos, this is kind of the perfect genre for you. If you are attached to 90s music and want to see that sort of uprising, I feel like this genre would probably fit you perfectly.
Or depending on the film, I also think because if you're in, because I feel like, especially because there's the interview with the Vampire TV series going on right now, which I didn't think about. Like we have that going on as well as like, I mean, it's strange because TV is definitely as much of a gateway now for people as film, which is interesting. That might be like with some of this, because some of this definitely has that sort of Anne Rice gothic vampire, like beautiful damned creatures, kind of like the damned, not like damned, like these damned creatures, but with others, like, because I feel like say with Girl with the Hungry Eyes or Midnight Kiss, like I feel like people are having a bit of a renaissance with like the erotic thrillers.
Oh, they are having, like, they sure are right now. They're fantasy erotica is what is. It's like orcs and elves and all that, like, and dragons. Like, that's the new thing, like fantasy erotica, which I was not aware of. Not aware of.
It's funny you mentioned that, Chris, because a few years ago, I was reading a story that I thought was going to be like a werewolf story, because I'm a fan of werewolves. I like a good lycanthrope. I didn't realize that it was going to be as explicit as, which I'm not a prude, but this is so gross. This is so gross. But the detail, I'll put this as genteel as I can. When the couple interlope, and he looks like a normal man. Okay, he's not like in beast form. Like, but then she's like, "What was that?" And he's like, "Oh God, how did he phrase it?" He's like,
No.
It's like, if you're putting together something from IKEA, like say a coat rack, and it's got I don't know, lipstick. I don't know. I had to stop it. I was like, when you reach your limits, like everybody has limits.
Put out that dog rocket. That's a line written by Dan Aykroyd in the American cinema classic, Nothing But Trouble.
Oh my God.
You're talking about dog rockets, I'm pretty sure. A red rocket.
Oh no, I want to die just thinking about any of this.
I'll do you one better. I read Mothman erotica once by choice.
That's awesome. How was it?
A lot of proboscises. I'm not making that up. I couldn't make it up like you said, I couldn't make this up if I tried, because I don't write Mothman erotica. Not saying there's anything wrong with it. If you get off on it and you love it, cool. Human moth people, not for me.
I want to know what that sound was that just came out of Heather's mouth when you said that.
I would never kink shame anybody, but aren't we such a fascinating species?
Yeah, that's nice way of putting it.
So you look at the Mothman and you're just like,
oh,
I like the cut of your jib.
I want to know what the jib looks like.
That's
the only.
I mean,
like those things are written because, again, it's like like you said, I'm curious, but at the same time, I already have the interest in it. There is a less than or possibly more than 0% chance that if you're into vampires, part of the component that you're into is they are sexually attractive to you. That's right.
Oh, yeah. They're very sexy.
So why can't you sexualize anything else? I mean, I have no. Yeah.
No. I honestly, I don't want to be a hypocrite. I literally wrote a slightly not there was no proboscises or whatever
probosci
of that probosci in my story, but I did write a slightly saucy piece of Radu fiction for a zine called Dream Date with a Villain, which is out of print. But it was fabulous. I'm very proud to be a part of it. There were a lot of lovely ladies in that scene, lovely creators. And there was actually Skeletor was in that issue too. But this was not like X-rated stuff, and there's nothing wrong with that. But yeah, I mean, I wrote saucy fiction about Red Deer. I can't judge anybody. I wouldn't anyways, because only assholes judge, and I don't ever want to be an asshole. But Probisci will live rent free in my head for a long time. It's that. Oh, good lord! No.
Hey.
Fascinating. And now my brain is all like, I wonder if there's Boggy Creek fanfic.
I mean, there's gotta be. I mean, there are books that are Bigfoot erotica. I have seen them. I do not own them. They are not on my shelf. I do not see them that way. I see them on Amazon as a possible purchase.
Can I share real quick one of my favorite pieces of film criticism? My late friend Scott once was telling me about a Bigfoot adult film he watched, and I was like, wow, how was that? And he complained because the member of the Bigfoot was clearly just a human male, and he's like, they didn't go to the trouble to make it. And I was like, that's your complaint. It wasn't realistic enough.
It was a sad squatch.
Bigfoot's Lil Squatch was not as big as he had claimed it was.
Oh, Lil Squatch. Oh, I don't like that.
Baby Bigfoot.
But I kind of love it. I don't know.
There's a movie out there called Bigfoot Jr. Little Bigfoot is what it's called, and is somehow not a full moon video film.
Is it? I was going to say, it sounds like a movie.
It's not, surprisingly, but I do believe it might have like Mickey Rooney in it. First in and of itself. Mickey Rooney's latter day filmography, I feel like when he was that Asian character in Breakfast at Tiffany's, like the sheer racism of how awful that character is and how how that character's portrayed in that movie put like a curse on the rest of his career. That's why he was Bill, right? Wasn't he Bill? Didn't Mickey Rooney play like a character with like a mental handicap called Bill? I'm like 99%.
Did he?
Sure he did.
I wouldn't doubt it. That's that probably added to the curse. The Mickey Rooney curse. I think of him though as Andy Hardy, of course, from this classic Hollywood era, and then I also think of Family Guy having this bit about him being shirtless and screaming at mice. I'm not the biggest Family Guy fan, but that shit was funny. Funny's funny. I can't help it. But I feel
what a journey.
Yeah, I know. I feel like I don't even know if I really properly answered your question on that.
Yeah, you did.
Okay, good. Probisci. Thank you, Chris.
So if you're super into Bigfoot erotica, go check out 90s vampire independent films.
True.
Or don't. I mean, we won't judge you. If you're that's a great question. I think if Bigfoot, you're gonna be less into 90s vampire and more into probably like 70s, more like sort of William Girdler horror. Like Grizzly might be up your alley, literally.
Up your Bigfoot alley.
Up your bowling alley. Ooh.
Oh my god. That's what happens when you get Heather and I together. It just devolves into the greatest thing possible.
I agree. I think this is also why we've had certain guests that may also be one of my co-hosts on Noise Junkies, who I think at this point reaches a level where he gets over mine and Chris's bullshit when Chris and I start being like, what's a great porn parody title?
Oh yeah, they won't let us do it. He doesn't like us doing it anymore.
He's like the stern dad. We're like the kids acting up, but you can't keep us down. We won't be oppressed. Thank you, Ryan, for not oppressing us.
Of course. I mean, I'm ready to say Asquatch whenever we're ready.
Yes!
I would, if I were to make a porn parody Bigfoot movie, it would be called Cum Squad, because that just sounds gross.
God, that sounds
it just has to sound gross. Or this ain't Bigfoot XXX porn parody.
This isn't a porn, but there is an independent comedy called Sex Squatch, and it's got a ska musical number. I haven't watched it yet, but it's in my docket. It looks really funny. I'm just saying.
Ska is another thing that had a big heyday in the 90s. Look at that. Bring it all around circle.
Exactly. Real big fish.
Real big foot.
Cum Squatch, apparently. Real big.
That would be the name of my Real Big Fish cover band, Real Bigfoot.
I like that. I like that. I'm picturing a Sasquatch wearing checkered Vans.
I think I'll have myself a beer, but being sung by a guy dressed up like Bigfoot.
Oh my god! And you know what movie Real Big Fish is on the soundtrack
Basketball.
for? Basketball.
Basketball.
Hell yeah.
Come on, Ted Dinslow.
I love that we all
Hell
went
yeah.
there immediately.
I know. This is like we're gonna form a cult now. No, I'm joking.
The cult of
Gonna
basketball.
form? Yeah, gonna, you say.
Oh, I got to send you my dues, by the
Okay,
way,
cool,
Chris. I
thanks.
forgot.
We can't go to
Dude.
Grimulac 4 without them.
Or Raging Waters
wherever,
later this year. Well, I think that pretty handily answers our 4 questions. Thank you, Heather.
Oh my gosh, my pleasure. Thank you guys so much for having me on.
Anything else about 90s independent vampires that we forgot that you want to raise at the last moment?
Oh, I feel like I have gone on journeys I could not have predicted.
Oh, boy, I
some
feel
of
like
it-
that
some-
is a
yeah.
true statement you're making right now.
But I think I'm good. I'm sure I'll remember a bunch of stuff when we get done recording. But tis part of the journey with any show. So no, I'm good. Thank you guys so much for letting me kind of rave and rant about loves and loss here on tonight's episode.
And proboscis.
Oh god.
So Heather, where can people find the other things that you work on when you are not here joining us?
Well, you could go to my link tree because that basically is sort of like the home that has links to all various things I do. Linktree.com/Mondo Heather. You'll find my website, mondoheather.com, a link to my Patreon. You'll find links to various shows I'm on, episodes of Noise Junkies and Culture Cast and Bollywood Cinema Club over here, as well as articles and all sorts of other sundry items that I may or may not be attached to. So yeah, linktree.com/Mondo Heather.
Perfect. And if you are interested in journeys like this, come back for another episode of Film Foundations. Hope you enjoyed it.
Do you want to plug your stuff? Do we want to plug my stuff? I was like, I don't know if you
Go
want
ahead.
to or.
Go
Yeah, go.
Your stuff. You
Ryan,
guys are
Ryan, what
amazing.
about you, Ryan? Where can people find the things that you work on when you and I aren't doing Film Foundations together?
I kind of like the idea of just pitching Linktree. So go to Linktree and look up Disconnected. But in all reality, I'm on every social media under Disconnected, or also Someone's Favorite Productions, where I'm working on special features for physical media releases and writing a zine every month and everything else under the sun that you can think of. What about you, Chris? What's going on with you?
WeirdingWayMedia.com. Heather already plugged it. I will mention it once again. Heather and I do frequently talk about Indian cinema. Sometimes Heather programs a month of the Culture Cast, and then everything goes wrong all at once. And that was December 2023, folks. So we're gonna have to raw do that year, if you know what I. That month of the year is gonna have to be raw done because we did not raw do very many of those movies, unfortunately. But I watched all of them, so there you go. But yeah. culturecast.com, patreon.com/culturecast, ways to contribute financially to the Culturecast, but more just the things that I work on over at weirdingwaymedia.com. That's where you can find me. And as for this show, you can find it at filmfoundations.com. Like, rate, and review the show wherever you get it, more than likely iTunes.